neighbor of mine and friend, worked for a company that was bought by Google. And so he had some interesting stories about what that was like to become part of Google. Because Google does some things, some strange things. Like they allow their employees, especially their developers, are allowed 1 day a week to work on whatever you want. Wherever your passion is, whatever you care about, make that your project. And then those projects over time are submitted and evaluated once a quarter, and somebody's project gets selected, it gets funded to become a Google offering. So have you ever looked at Google Sky, which is the star map? It's like Google Earth, but it's Google Sky. That came from a person's pet project. Most of the ideas, so the two guys that started Google, very bright guys, very clever with the search engine, but most of the ideas that Google has come up with in the last 2 or 3 years since its beginning were from the employees who are allowed the flexibility to pursue whatever their passion is. Picasso was a result of one of the employees who had a lot of photos and wanted a better way to organize them. And then he did a little work on that. It got selected as the project. I think they get, I'm trying to remember, $100,000 prize. If your project's selected, they select one a quarter to become a product. So there are thousands of these things going on at any one time, but they select 1 or 2, they fund them, and the person that started it gets a $1,000 prize or $100,000. It's a big deal. But people don't do it because of the money. That's just kind of an interesting byproduct. They do it because they're allowed to pursue what their interests are. Very creative company. So my friend who became part of Google said it's like there are no measurements. They don't measure these people and what they're doing. And then he realized it's because the measurement is learning. It's not about whether or not your project was a success. It's did you learn something from it. That is success. And then that collective learning just continues to support Google in creating and offering very clever kinds of services and capabilities to the customers. So, okay, so what simple little exercise, all kinds of interesting things about innovation. Where's the pen? So, if we were to organize these into, so we've come up with sort of 5 categories of things that we think are really important. The first one is alignment. So we talked about, we were able to create new, here, let me give you the, I'm going to take one and pass it on. So alignment, we talked about the fact that it was helpful that we all had the same goal. Everybody was working towards the same thing in terms of improving this process, the same understanding of the rules. And that enabled us to come up with lots of different creative ideas. So we find that alignment is a tremendously powerful aspect. If people aren't aligned to the purpose and the goal, if they don't have some emotional connection or buy-in to it, the likelihood they'll contribute is near zero. There's a guy named Peter Drucker who I think he's still alive, but he's very prolific. He's written 50 books about business. And in the 1950s, he made the observation that the nature of business was shifting from creating things. So 100 years ago, Henry Ford introduced the production line and compartmentalized jobs. Right? People had specific jobs. They didn't need to understand the whole process. They just needed to put the knobs on the toaster. And the number of knobs they put on a toaster directly related to how many toasters came off the line. So their activity was directly related to the result that was created. His observation was that in the 50s and 60s, businesses moved from creating tangible physical products to intangibles, and he coined the term knowledge worker. Have you heard that term before, knowledge worker? And he said, businesses now are dependent on knowledge, because what we create in business is information, knowledge, loyalty, influence, relationship. Right? The products themselves really become, because they're commodities, everybody has a toaster. It's the reputation of the company which is intangible. So industry in general has moved from creating tangible things to creating intangible things, loyalty, relationships, things like that. And that requires knowledge workers, not manufacturing or production line workers. And his observation about knowledge workers is all knowledge workers are volunteers, because you can't force someone to give up their knowledge. Right? You can force, I can take a toaster away from you, but I can't take what you know away from you. And it's a very abstract sort of thing. So if we buy into that proposition, all knowledge workers are volunteers, what do we volunteer for? We only volunteer for stuff we care about. So if the employees are not aligned to the purpose of the company, if they don't care about the mission of the company, the likelihood they're going to contribute new and creative ideas or share their knowledge is greatly diminished. So this is a huge transformation for business, and it's why alignment becomes so important. So one of the things that is powerful, although it will sound kind of simple, is these, oh bless you, but these little taglines that reflect a value proposition or the purpose of the company. We call it a compelling purpose. So does anybody know Walt Disney, Disneyland? Does anybody know what Disney's as a company's purpose is? What their stated, their tagline? We create happiness. So how does that feel to work for a company whose purpose is we create happiness? That feels pretty good. I can do that. Sanofi Aventis, which is a pharmaceutical company, saving lives one person at a time. That's kind of cheating. They're in a life-saving business, right? But that's a compelling purpose, right? Let's see, VeriSign, the folks who do the digital certificates online on the web. Trust on the internet. So a compelling purpose is a very short, concise statement of the purpose of the company that people emotionally react to, hopefully in a positive way. So I was doing a workshop at Philip Morris International. Any smokers in the room? No? All right. And I was really looking forward to this part of the work, so we spent quite a bit of time on this compelling purpose. Philip Morris does cigarettes. Right? So I'm just kind of dying to know how they view their compelling purpose. How do they engage their employees in terms of alignment, right? So at places like VeriSign, where we've also done workshops, people are proud of the fact that they're about trust on the internet. You can sense it when they talk about it, and they all know it. That's the other thing about compelling purpose, is why you know it. Well, at Philip Morris, we get to this part of the workshop. So what's the compelling purpose of Philip Morris? Very quiet. And one of the people in the attendees says, actually, when I'm at a party with my wife, I don't tell them I work for Philip Morris. I tell them I'm in IT. So, here we have a spectrum, right? We create happiness. We satisfy smokers. I'm not sure what's on the other end. We kill people. So yeah, guaranteed.
They are giving a relaxation for certain amount of people.
Yes, it is, right. They did have some little tagline. It was improving the experience of the mature smoker.
Relax in your life.
We're gonna kill you. Pretty sure.
You will die anyway.
So might as well have fun.
Just enjoy it.
We're gonna die anyway. So those are kind of the extremes. That went way further than I probably should have. Anyway, the two extremes. So alignment is a hugely powerful thing. If people feel a sense of connected, even if it doesn't have to be a deep, like how emotionally connected you feel to your family, or that kind of level, but it has to be at a certain level, an emotional buy-in to the purpose of the company, or the purpose of the group, or the purpose of the community. Does anybody participate in online communities? And the translation business has got a pretty strong online community, isn't it? Yeah? No? Yeah. They all, yeah, they have a certain alignment to a